Okay, the June 15th, 2017 regular meeting of the Granada Community Services District Board of Directors is called to order. Roll call, please.
President Jim Blanchard is absent. Vice President Leonard Warren.
Here.
Director Matthew Clark.
Present.
Director Barbara Dye.
Here.
And Director David Seaton.
Here.
And at the table is Legal Counsel Jonathan Whitwer. I'm the Assistant General Manager, Delia Canito, and our General Manager is fortunately out today.
Oh, I thought you were going to say MIA.
Couldn't make it.
Okay, we have no members of the public. Any directors have public comment? Oh.
I'd just like to thank Delia and her assistant for giving me an orientation and a tour of the pump station here, and I look forward to a fuller tour later.
You had a tour of the pump station?
I
Yeah.
did.
So you saw the room in the back there?
Yes.
Yes.
Where up until November of '97, which is when I got elected, they used to have the board meetings in
Yes,
that
I
room?
saw that, and I had a very complete tour.
There was nothing,
It's a lovely spot.
there was nothing wrong with that room. Let's see, it was noisy, smelly, too cold in the winter, too hot in the summer,
Too
too
small.
small.
This is much better.
Did I cover everything?
Well, remember when they used to be over at the strip mall there across from the restaurant?
No.
Yeah, many years ago.
Well, it must be before I moved here.
Yeah.
Okay, action agenda. Item 1, consideration of ordinance amending the district ordinance code relating to parks and other district property regulations and related enforcement provisions. Second reading.
Okay, so this is, I'm going to present the staff report to explain why this is on again, because you did adopt it at a second reading at your last meeting. And then Director Warren asked, can we do a summary when we publish this? And I said yes. And the answer is yes, but we have to do a pre-adoption publication first
What?
before we can do that, and then a post-adoption publication. We used to, before we became a CSD, we didn't have to do all that. As a sanitary district, we weren't following the same statutory provisions. So we have now done our pre-adoption publication, and we are asking the board to adopt at the second reading the same thing that they adopted last time.
I have a question. I don't know why I didn't catch this the first time around. In 35102, the committee is named Granada Community Services District Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. But in section 352, it's the Granada Parks Advisory Committee. Could we somehow make those two names the same?
Yes, we can, and that is in the nature of a
By
clerical error.
correcting 352 to match 35102, I suppose?
Well, what does the board prefer?
That would be my recommendation.
Let's use the full name.
Actually, we could just call it committee too, because we defined it as committee.
That's true.
Yeah, but we might have more than one committee at
But
some
I
point.
think it makes sense to use the full name under 352 as well. So we will make that clerical adjustment. So
I didn't-
we need a motion to read the, first we need the vice president to read the title, if we haven't already. And then we need a motion to waive reading of the full text and adopt the ordinance here at its second reading.
So just read below where it gives the ordinance number?
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion regarding an ordinance amending the district ordinance code relating to parks and other district property regulations and related enforcement provisions?
I move that we waive the reading of the entire ordinance because we want to be out of here before midnight.
Second.
And adopt the ordinance at its second reading.
And adopt the ordinance at a second meeting.
Reading.
Second reading,
Reading.
which is occurring tonight.
So third reading.
Everybody's clear about that.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? I have a question that I didn't get a chance to ask on the first reading. Where it says, no cats, fowl, or other domesticated animals shall be permitted to enter. Exactly how are we gonna stop the cats from entering?
We have our ways.
Actually, I already heard that there were some kitties living over in the bushes over there, so.
Yeah, good luck stopping the
Yeah.
cats.
Yeah, right.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, no further discussion, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstention, motion carries 4-0. Item 2, consideration of ordinance amending District Code Article VII relating to permit fees, second reading. Do we really have to use Roman numerals? Hate Roman numerals.
I think we're using numbers from our existing code.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't put the tabs in, I have to find that. Items 2. And
So this has already been through its first reading, at which we added the word detached under double I. For detached accessory dwelling units, the charge shall be 50% because we're not allowed to charge for attached dwelling unit. Well, cities and counties are not allowed to charge. A bill has been introduced this year to correct that oversight for special districts. So I recommended at the first reading that we just face the facts and include, have our ordinance be consistent with what cleanup legislation is going through right now.
I'm sure that's just an oops because the people involved with it didn't understand the concept that maybe not everybody lives in a city. DMV
I don't know.
doesn't even understand that. I was there today. Oh, boy.
So we're again ready for a motion.
All right, so is there a motion regarding an ordinance amending district ordinance code relating to sewer connection charges?
I will move that we waive we waive the reading of the ordinance and adopt the ordinance number 169.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. This is a second reading, so can't change it except for editing corrections.
Seems reasonable to me.
I have a question. General manager's memo on this notes that the amendment would create three categories of connections that would have reduced fees: auxiliary non-habitable residential structures, and at section 143, we have auxiliary residential structures defined as a detached building without a kitchen whose use is incidental to the use of the main building on the parcel. Does that cover saying that it is defined as a non-habitable structure?
I think the county's definition of a living unit is it has to have a kitchen. Or conversely, they only define it as a living unit if it has a kitchen.
Yeah, but I don't think that makes it non-habitable. That's a very good question, because it
Yeah.
makes it a non-dwelling unit.
I think it kind of depends the precise scenario, right? That little cottage built in the backyard versus projects like Big Wave or something where you have a more functional shared kitchen scenario where they don't necessarily have it in their unit, but they have good access to it. I think that's.
But for something like Big Wave that you're describing, we have a totally different mechanism.
Yeah, I was just using that
Unit.
example in terms of an attempt to show that there's a shared kitchen that's functional versus walking across the yard into somebody else's house. And I think that kind of, I think that's where the gray area is in terms of them approving. Most of the time it would be if there's no kitchen, you can't.
So
live in
you're
there.
thinking of some backyard building that has a bedroom and no kitchen?
I'm sure there's some scenarios where they might approve it, but most scenarios, if there's no kitchen, they're not gonna approve. It's not gonna be habitable, unless they're legally speaking.
Well, for me, habitable also implies a bathroom.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
so
I
I
think
mean,
that would be
usually the
good.
distinction here is between a second unit, and now called an accessory dwelling unit, which has a kitchen, and a guest house, which does not have a kitchen. But could be habitable, could have a bathroom, it could have, I mean, usually habitable involves insulation in the walls, it meets the building code standards for habitable structures. And, you know, so there are fire regulations that are related to that, so I'm afraid I'm gonna say that our definition of auxiliary residential structures, because we're saying there's no charge for them, I don't know, Delia, do you remember if we were thinking that we were not charging for guest houses too? I thought that we were trying to get auxiliary structures to become only things like cabanas or pool houses.
Yeah, we
those kind of things.
we had those specific words in the
Yeah.
discussion.
So I'm gonna recommend that we not stop this until we get that definition straightened out, because it will cause problems in the future.
Okay, so we're gonna table this to the next regular meeting?
Yep.
And then it has to, does it have to go back to first reading?
No, this would be the first reading, and
Oh, I
actually,
thought this-
we should fix this right now, though.
Oh, I thought this was, wait a minute. Am I
This is a
confused?
second reading, but
That's
if you
what I thought.
change it,
Yeah.
it becomes the first reading, and then you have to do a second reading.
Oh, okay.
But we do need to change it to say,
All right, so for this to be the first reading, we have to have the specific language from you now that's
Yep.
gonna go in there?
I'm trying to come up with it.
Well, the way I read this report, the first two parts are in response to state legislation. So is this language from state legislation that we're?
No, the auxiliary part is already in our code,
Ah,
and it, yeah, it doesn't define auxiliary, and it gives examples of a cabana or a pool house.
Can you,
So Chuck, I know, wanted to say that we were not gonna charge for those kinds of things, but in order to do that, he wanted to define them as non-habitable. And
okay, let me make a
definition of
suggestion.
43 doesn't say non-habitable,
Well,
so we need to put that in there.
okay, what do you think of, and I don't have the exact wording and punctuation here, but if it said a detached building without a kitchen or toilet facilities?
The problem that I can foresee with that is, we had a planning referral for an artist studio that was going to have a restroom in it.
Right,
That is an accessory building to the main dwelling.
right?
Whether it's habitable or not, I don't know, but that kind of puts into question, is it gonna be chargeable or not?
Well, then you get into this really ugly thing of how do you define habitable?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the county has a definition of habitable. So the question is whether we can just say a detached, non-habitable building, blah, blah, blah. And then, this happens to us every so often, we're relying on the county's definitions. I mean, we are actually relying on the county's definitions for the term dwelling unit.
Well, if we trust the county, there's actually benefit in relying on their definitions, because then nobody can say we're picking on them or anything like that.
Well, and it provides consistency between the governmental
Yeah.
agencies.
There's that.
So what is this trying to accomplish?
The auxiliary part of this is trying to change what we have now, which actually says we charge you 1/2 of an ERU
Uh-huh.
for an auxiliary structure, and it says parentheses, e.g. cabana or pool house. Chuck wants to charge nothing for that. And then he wants to charge accessory dwelling units, which are like a second unit, a half. And he wants to come back in the next couple months and address things like apartments and guest housings and all of those things.
So long-term, when he was, you know, if you ask him, he would kind of say, just get this going, and his, long-term, he sees it revised multiple times to where there's multiple incentives to, you know, basically the different fees for different structures, and then incentives for building smaller, basically. You know.
Well, that makes sense to me, but you're saying that you can build an accessory structure with a bathroom, which is gonna require a connection, and we're not gonna charge them anything, even though in the past they were charged 50%.
Well, we're redefining or defining for the first time auxiliary to say it's non-habitable. So
Even
should-
if it has a bathroom, which requires,
Well, I
I'm
would,
pretty sure non-habitable.
Yeah, isn't the whole idea
Pool
is
houses
to
now
get
often
at
have bathrooms.
structures that are set up such that they can contribute to the wastewater stream? I mean, I could see someone who has a carport now wanting to build a detached garage with a sink in it, and that has to, get plugged into their wastewater output.
but the sink in the garage is not likely to generate more wastewater than if they didn't have the sink in the garage and used a sink in the house.
What about the bathroom in the clubhouse, in the pool house?
That's likely the same concept,
Scenario.
where you're either gonna use the one in the pool house, or you're gonna go in the house and use it there. But the artist studio example, potentially the artist studio could be attracting a lot of visitors, and that would increase the wastewater
Okay, so
generation.
how about this? Define auxiliary residential structures as a detached, non-habitable building without a kitchen or a bathroom, whose use is incidental to the use of the main building in the park. So, because that's what we're trying to get at, is that auxiliary will be defined as, you point out, should not be generating much to the wastewater stream, if anything.
Right.
Because even cabanas have, bathrooms sometimes, although not used very much.
I don't know, never been in one, so
Pool
I don't know what it
showers.
is.
pool houses
Pool
often
houses.
do.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a better example, I think, as well.
Yeah, with all the people that have swimming pools around here.
The reason we would like to move ahead with this, and the background for you,
Yeah.
Director Dye, is that the third item on here,
Which I understand, and it makes sense.
okay, and that was a result of an actual example that
Right.
came through, and we were addressing that applicant's concerns with that. Then we also decided we should address the legislation that occurred last year about ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And that left us with this language that was already in there about auxiliary, and we wanted to address that because it left a confusing situation once you went to ADUs, once you added ADUs. Because the way it was in the past, auxiliary and ADUs might overlap. So we were trying to redefine auxiliary. So that's why we wanted to move ahead with this, to take care of that, those immediate situations, come back in a couple months with the full issues of apartments and guest houses and so forth.
So now
So just
I'm,
back to my question of a while ago, is the question of accessory dwelling units based on recently enacted state legislation that we're
Yes.
trying to, but that doesn't have any definitions in it?
Yes, it does, and we have.
So shouldn't we be paralleling definitions in the state?
Yes, and that's what 44 does. That's out of the
That's
state.
what 44 does, and so 43 was just added in and is not related to the state legislation.
Correct, it wasn't related to
I got it
what we
now.
already had in
Thank
the
you.
ordinance.
Thank you.
Excuse me. So, we can either put this off, but I'm kind of reluctant to do that with the history of it, or have this be a first reading in which we change it to the definition of auxiliary residential structures to a detached, non-habitable building without a kitchen or a bathroom.
okay, but I'm now officially confused on the section Roman numeral lowercase I, where it says, for auxiliary residential structures which require a separate connection to the district's wastewater facilities, there shall be no residential connection charge. What?
I think that was to deal with this, sometimes we might have a separate connection for a pool house.
But that's not a residential structure, is it?
Well, it's a structure that is incidental in a residential district. So I understand the confusion, but that's, we were trying to cover, this is all under a section in our code that is connection charges for residential uses. Then there's a section that follows it for non-residential uses.
Well, can you add some words to Roman lowercase I that clarifies it so that we don't have somebody coming along in the future with a lawyer saying, no, this is what it means.
Well, if we're defining the auxiliary residential structure as a non-habitable building without a kitchen or bathroom, I don't see any.
But then would it require a
Yes.
connection at all?
Yeah.
Right.
But this says which require a separate connection.
It just means there would
It
be no
might,
charge.
I guess is the
Yeah.
point, is that it might, and so.
For
we're
what?
trying to say, even if it does,
It doesn't have.
we're
a charge.
charging you nothing
Yeah.
because it's not gonna have a, I mean, we could say, in I, we could say for auxiliary residential structure as defined
Yeah.
in this code, or something like that.
So 43 is gonna be changed to indicate non-habitable?
Non-habitable building without a kitchen or a bathroom.
Okay, so with that change, then Roman I guess is okay the way it is.
Well, why would an auxiliary residential structure require a separate connection to the district's wastewater facilities if it doesn't have a kitchen or a bathroom?
Well, an artist's studio, I can see generating
sink. So if they have a
wastewater
sink?
with a sink, or, I don't know what else, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there would be.
I would say generally, you're right that they don't need to.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
just trying to cover what if it somehow was required. Sometimes the county will even say, in their conditions, you have to get a connection from the sanitary district and get, a permit from them.
Maybe you should take the comma out after Leonard. For auxiliary residential structures which require a separate connection.
After facilities or
After
before
structures
which?
in the I.
Or both of them.
Well, no, if you take out the first comma, then that's, yeah, I think that completely changes the meaning to something that we don't want.
Well, this implies that all auxiliary residential structures require a separate connection. Maybe just take out the I.
What would happen if you left out the middle clause between the two commas?
Yes, I agree.
Which I suspect is where Barbara was about to go.
Yeah.
Does it still do what we need it to do with the middle clause removed?
I think
And,
it
and
does.
the, and
I
the
think
change
it
you
does.
already discussed to 43,
Right,
it's
right.
critical on that.
And we're gonna say as defined.
As defined in,
defined.
in section 143.
Yeah.
Actually, what is that, 104 paren 1 paren
We'll get-
43?
we'll get the right,
Can we,
section.
oh, I sure wish we could come up with a better numbering
Well,
scheme.
we're going to, we have drafted a complete revision to the code, which we're.
10 years ago?
Started 10 years ago, a long gap, and then now about a year ago, we're trying to get it finalized to the point where we can bring it to the board.
I think maybe we're gonna pass it while I'm still on the board.
Don't be so optimistic.
I don't think I'm gonna respond. Hopefully.
I would just say that I think where I was a little bit confused as well, where I think Chuck kind of made more sense of it, is I think this makes a lot of sense in the future when everything's clearly defined and broken out. And then it's not so much we're getting into semantics of definitions, you're literally, at some point, we might have fees for these different
Yes.
scenarios, a
Right.
pool house versus a artist studio or whatever. So I think that's where,
Right. and
that's
that
where
was-
I think it will make more sense when it progresses.
That was definitely the intention, and we were
Yeah.
just trying to get this piece of it through to address both the legislation and the one situation we had, and then we discovered that was gonna mess up the auxiliary part of our existing code, so.
So for clarity of the public record, could you start at the top here and review all of the changes from the printed copy that we have in the packet?
So, under section 1, there's a 43 in parentheses defining auxiliary residential structures that will read a detached non-habitable building without a kitchen or a bathroom whose use is intended, is incidental to the use of the main building on the parcel. And then the other change is under section 2 of the ordinance, and it's down under the small I in parentheses. And that will say, for auxiliary residential structures as defined in section 104, 43 in parentheses, there shall be no residential connection charge.
Isn't that 104, paren 1, paren 43, paren? Yeah, that's why this numbering scheme is
Yeah.
silly.
Let me just say, it will be a clerical or typographical correction to make sure we get it exactly the way our current code is in both section 1, because section 1 does not have any subsections listed. And I don't have the code in front of me, but it may. So, and if it does, then we'll add that.
I don't believe the
Yeah,
definitions have any.
Yeah, that's my
subsections.
recollection
Yeah.
too. So if it doesn't, then what I read is correct. So as defined in section 104, parentheses 43.
Okay, anything else before we
I just
entertain a
have one
motion?
comment, which is on number I. It should really be when fewer than the maximum number of dwelling units allowed under the applicable land use regulations are built.
Oh, I like picking that nit. I missed it.
You're absolutely right.
I'm surprised Matthew missed it too.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, one fewer than the maximum number, et cetera.
All right.
All
Are
right,
built.
so now we actually do need you to make a motion. Again, we've already read the title, waiving the full reading, but including the changes that I have just read, and approving the ordinance at first reading.
And we have to withdraw the motion on the table.
Yes, you do.
What was the motion on the table?
To approve it.
Second reading.
Oh, all right. So that was Matthew.
I'm
and
happy to withdraw my
Barbara.
second.
Oh, I'll withdraw my first.
All right, is there a new motion as stated by council or suggested by council?
I will move.
And the change was I, correct? As well?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Now it's at first reading.
Yes.
I move that we
Approved.
approve the ordinance number 169 after our first reading here as amended this evening and explained by council.
And waive the reading of the full text.
And this was short. Waive the reading of the full text.
And we are, by the way, planning to publish this as the full text, so we don't have to do a pre-publication.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there a second?
Second.
I hope there's no further discussion. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I think we've discussed it enough. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Motion carries 4-0. By the way, at the federal level, there is a law called the Read the Bills Act that the libertarians have been trying for many years to get passed, and it's accumulating co-signers so over the years, that basically says that Congress can't vote on something unless, or any given member can't vote on something unless they certify that either they have read it themselves in its entirety, or they have sat in chambers where it was read aloud in its entirety. It's called the Read the Bills Act, RTBA.
Oh, you know what the federal budget looks like?
Yeah,
They're gonna have to say, oh, I read the whole thing.
they have to certify that they've read the whole thing. Okay, item 3 Consideration of revised sewer authority mid-coast side operations, 5-year infrastructure plan, and contract collection services budgets for fiscal year 2017-18.
I actually spoke with our general manager today and asked if he would recommend approval of the revised budgets that are presented, and I believe they were also approved by the SAM board for dissemination to the member agencies on Monday. And the,
With a wrinkle.
I'm sorry?
With a wrinkle.
With a wrinkle, okay. The one issue that our general manager was concerned about was the infrastructure budget and its priorities, and he is satisfied with the changes that were made, and he would indeed recommend approval of these budgets.
Well, I wish Director Blanchard was here tonight. The the motion that was made and passed, and so you should have gotten something additional from Sam on this, was to present two versions of the O&M budget to the member agencies for approval, where one version is no doubt the one we have here, and the other version differs only in a single line item, which increases the infrastructure budget for this year, this coming year, from $1.5 million to $2 million. Because some of us feel we really need to get the IPS done ASAP.
Well, the general manager had requested that the IPS prioritization be changed because under the strategic or the infrastructure plan that was presented, it was a level 2 priority, and it was changed apparently to a level
It's
one.
now number one on
Yes,
the list.
yes.
So
that-
basically, all the
Right.
infrastructure money is gonna go to the
Right.
IPS.
Are you saying that the budget then we have for the infrastructure right now is not correct?
No. This budget and an alternate to this budget were supposed to be presented to each member agency for approval. And if, whichever one gets the votes from all three member agencies is the one we'll use.
I did not get an alternate. I did not receive it.
Well, that's certainly my understanding of what we agreed to do.
I can go back and check,
And
but I
so
don't think I got it.
what I would recommend is, well, a two-part recommendation, that this board approve the budget, and that we then also approve the alternate with the $2 million line item, even though we don't have it in front of us. It should just be the one line change to increase the amount, because we really need to get that.
Would that be adding additional segments to increase the cost?
The direction will be that the general manager arranges to have as much of it fixed as the money will provide for. I think the words used by another SAM director were as many feet as that money will pay for.
I believe somewhere in here, it might be in one of the SAM meeting minutes, but just what you're talking about, sending out two slightly different versions.
Well, that was only discussed at the meeting this week, so it can't be in any minutes.
Well, I heard this somewhere. It wasn't at a meeting I went to, I don't think.
So unless there's questions that either I or staff can answer, and I have to say that reading piles of numbers makes my eyes bleed. Like I said, my recommendation is that we pass both the budget as presented, and so the motion should be those words, that we pass the SAM budget as presented. And then I would look for a second motion to also approve the alternate with the increase in IPS spending. And so if we assume that our share is 30% of that, additional 500,000, then that would be an added cost to the district of, let's see, 0.3 times 0.5, another 150,000. Did I do that right?
So.
Ignoring the fact that our ownership's 29.5, except that this may be based on flow, which I still object to, but saves us money, so what the heck?
Yeah, there's something in here that is 26% for.
Something like that. So,
Where does it come into play, the associated sewer service charge increase?
Well, we won't have those numbers until we do the study for the rates, which has been budgeted in the GCSD budget for next year, because they'll have to be all calculated out, so we'll have a better idea of what the rate will need to be increased to coming in next year, this time next year.
That would be under the next item where it's our budget,
Yeah.
right? So this is the SAM budget, and, you know, that will affect our budget. If we're gonna have to raise the rates because of that, because of the SAM budget, then we
Right.
would consider that under item 4.
that's why that item 4 wording is the way it is.
So, as I understand it, we're trying to approve this tonight, so we don't have the actual resolutions in the packet this is here, but
Oops.
we have prior, we've done this every year, so we have standard resolutions. I believe.
Right.
Yes, we do.
So you're saying we can approve the resolutions even though we don't have the printed ones?
Well, the motion should say to approve the standard resolutions for the SAM budgets. There are at least more than one. I think we've got it down to 2 resolutions, but whatever number of resolutions
Right,
we need.
should be 2.
Well, let's just say approve resolutions necessary to
Necessary to.
yeah,
for both
to approve
budgets.
both budgets.
Can Leonard, I don't understand. How can we approve two budgets that are $500,000 difference?
Well, no, the 2 budgets we're talking about, one is the SAM O&M budget,
Oh,
operation
okay,
and maintenance,
that I
and then the
understand.
other is the collection system
Okay.
budget. So the O&M budget is sometimes referred to as the JPA budget because it's the budget for what the Joint Powers Authority agreement requires SAM to do. And then the collection system budget is an add-on that has nothing to do with the JPA agreement, but it's just SAM being a contractor to each of the member agencies for maintaining the member agencies' sewer lines.
I understand that. So the revised SAM budget is the O&M
Well,
budget?
If,
Is that where capital projects?
right, and so, what I would like to do is, first, get a motion approved to approve the budget as presented, and then I'll ask for another motion to approve the alternate, at the higher number, and so hopefully we'll approve.
I
Yeah,
don't
that's a
understand
better
how
way
we
to
can
go.
do that. How can you approve, we could approve 2 budgets for 2 separate numbers?
Because,
Contingent on what?
the SAM budget has, under the JPA agreement, the SAM budget has to be approved by all 3 member agencies.
Okay,
And so it's unclear whether all 3 member agencies will approve it at the higher number.
so we'd pass one and then pass the other contingent on approval of the other 2
Of the other,
agencies?
yes.
Well, we don't have to say contingent, it's implicit in the whole structure.
Well, I just think it's, yeah, okay.
Because if we approve it at the higher number, but one or both of the other 2 member agencies doesn't, then our approval is moot.
The second option was all the way up to.
Our approval means nothing if we've approved both of them, both versions.
Okay, but I guess I would just feel better if it said that it was contingent on approval from the other 2 for us to, because if we're approving a budget that is for more money, then we need to say only if the other 2 agencies agree. I mean, I don't really understand how it works yet in
Well,
full detail, but
I guess we can do that. I think that there's no need to, but, we can if you're more comfortable doing it that way.
I don't know.
But,
just-
first let's
I'll
see.
defer to the people who attend the
Real quick,
meetings and stuff.
what was the process that they arrived at this, the percent change is 29%, 31% for Montera, 14% for us, you know, looking at how many variables come into play, like Chuck says, you know, by the time you plan things, a year has gone by, it's hard to really narrow down what you're gonna do in a year. Why is there such variance between us and the other two agencies?
I think, you know, I'm not 100% sure of this, but I think that the answer to your question is that the flow percentage allocations vary year to year. So in a previous year, our flow percentage was probably higher. The SAM budget percentage is lagged by a year. So, and I think it runs from something like April to March. So our flow let's see if I can even get the fiscal years right. So we're currently in FY 16, 17. So, so our flow for the year ending in something like March of 17 is almost certainly a lower percentage than it was for the year ending in March of 2016. And that's the only thing I can think of that would explain the differences in the percent change. And that basically happens every year because the year-to-year flows are not that repeatable.
Can I ask another question? So on page 1 of item 7A, down at the bottom, where it says total, under FY 2017-18, you would add $500,000 to that total allocated by the percentages, so it would be 5,650,570.
What?
So if you're gonna increase it,
The one that we would increase would, for the
Is the
alternate
total.
budget, would be the total line under FY 2017/18.
and it would go up by 500,000.
Right.
Okay, and then if you go to page, shoot, I guess the page after page 8, it says attachment A at the top. And it says infrastructure project. The $500,000 goes where?
You see the 1,505,000.
Yep.
As a subtotal there under infrastructure project.
Yes, that's the total of the funded project.
So the line item that currently has 1,430,000, which is force main replace segments 1, 2, 3, and 4, the 1.43 million won't actually cover all of that, and so we're proposing increasing that to 1.930.
Okay, and that's still segments 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Right.
We're just gonna do it right?
We'll get a lot more of it done with that much additional money.
Okay, so it's in the budget before, it's replacing segments 1, 2, 3, and 4, and now it's gonna cost more to do the same thing?
Well, the 1.43 million will not cover all of segments 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think it's gonna cover like 2.5 of those 4 segments.
Interesting way to put your budget.
Yeah, well,
As I'm comfortable as Barbara is, the idea of passing 2 different budgets for the same thing, the same time period, this seems really strange to me.
okay, can we come back to that and, you know, because I think it's very important that we, as a minimum, approve the budget as presented. So if we could get that done first, then circle back to,
Yeah, I agree that that is the most appropriate first step, and maybe there will not be a second step, we'll see.
right.
Well, if we think that other $500,000 is needed, why don't we pass the bigger budget?
Because half of them, they won't pass it.
Well,
There's reasons for doing it this way that are strategic, and I don't want to say any more about it. other than my recommendation is that we pass both as presented and alternate.
Well, I'm fine with it as long as it's contingent.
Yeah, like I said, we can do that if that makes you more comfortable with it. So any other questions or
Yes.
anything? Okay.
Yes, on page 7 of the, at the top, the SAM budget memo, whatever you call this, this is a question for our SAM rep and council as well. And see the emphasized, it's page 7 of their budget. There's no page number on the bottom.
So it's the page that starts in the middle of a sentence saying additional funding in the
Right.
revised budget?
Is it, what page on our agenda?
We don't have page numbers on our agenda. You may have gotten them, but we didn't print page numbers. I don't know how you got it.
It's-
I think you should.
I know,
This is-
and I apologize for that, but it was because I don't have the program to do that, and they were done on Saturday, and Genevieve and Chuck were not available tonight.
This is the staff report
Yeah.
for their budget, and it starts with page 1 up at the upper
Yep,
right,
yep.
and I'm talking about page 7 at the upper right,
Okay.
where the emphasize, the bold-faced sentence is, if the budget is approved, staff requested that the portion of the assessments related to infrastructure be split into 6 equal payments and billed the first 6 months of the year. In the context of a budget, what does a request mean? Are we approving this, that it will be billed in 6 equal months, equal payments in the first 6 months of the fiscal year, or not?
Well, that's an interesting,
Well, first of all, it's a budget, right? So budgets are not completely binding in the sense that they can be amended throughout the year.
True.
So, I guess I would just read this as, and also, that is kind of in the, isn't that the explanatory language? Is this considered part of the budget? That doesn't look like it.
No, it is part of the staff memo.
yeah, so that request, I would
So-
think, has to actually be approved separately from the budget.
Yes, I would think so. Agree.
Well, it's just a request too. I mean, so,
Right.
I mean, first of all, I would go back to what Director Warren is attempting to accomplish and say, this is not part of the budget. If you're going to approve the budget that as presented, you should do that if you're going to. And I thought Director Dye had an interesting point about under the infrastructure project description on its attachment A. It does kind of imply that you're going to replace all those segments. I mean, maybe it would be good to the extent feasible with funding, or with this funding, or something like that.
Well, if I'm understanding correctly what the segments are, I think 1, 2, 3, and 4 is the whole thing from where we left off a couple of years ago with the CIPP, all the way down to where it converts to a gravity sewer in front of Rocket Farms.
Because
But
if you notice, it's repeated again under the unfunded projects for another $1,470,000.
where is unfunded?
If you look at the page after page 8, where we were just talking,
The attachment A.
attachment
Yeah.
A, if you look, funded item number 1 is replace segments 1, 2, 3, and 4 for $1,430,000. And then unfunded, the top unfunded item is replace segments 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, I don't see where it says unfunded.
Well, it just said
Well,
no.
if you look over on the right side, it says included in the budget, no. So it implies that they really need $3
Proofread.
million to do the project, and half of it is not being funded. So
Right.
I
Right.
guess that does make sense then.
Right.
So I'm fine with supporting the additional funding, because it seems like it's something that needs to be done. I defer to our rep.
Well, only Half Moon Bay is arguing against it, but that's because they don't want to pay for it. But I'll go into that a little bit more under Sam Rep's reports.
Well, let's deal with
Yeah.
the budget, and the only question is if you feel it's clear enough, and maybe it is, because as Director Dodge points out, it shows up both in the funded and the unfunded sections of the budget, and in both cases saying replace segments 1, 2, 3, and 4. Obviously, it's not going to be accomplished by the amount that is in the funded portion.
Well, what it should say, but I don't think you want to print it this way in the budget, is it should say replace as much of it as we have money to do.
Well, I wouldn't see a problem with that, frankly, but I mean, the other part of this is that there are 2 other agencies that are going to be approving something, and they won't, a lot of times it's better just to stick with what's presented, because if there are differences, then we have to go back and resolve those
Yeah, that's
differences, and
fine.
we don't have much time, is what we're getting at.
Right.
So I guess I'm gonna
Can-
at least suggest that you go with what you've got here, and then we will talk after you, if you are gonna approve this, about the request, and also whether the board wants to approve an increase in the amount of the budget, if other, contingent on the other agencies agree to it.
Can we approve 2 resolutions with a single motion?
Well, you can, but, so, yes, you can, we've done that before, in other words.
All
So
right.
this is only the O&M, is that what we're looking at here?
Yeah, that first part.
I'm sorry, can I just say one more thing?
Well, the collection system maintenance budget should be here somewhere.
It's
It's
in,
in the
it's in
back.
the back.
Yeah, there it
This
is.
that.
Yeah, see, I didn't read them in this packet because, there's only so many times you can look at a set of numbers.
I will move that we.
Wait, Barbara had,
I had one more thing, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm just noting that in their strategic plan goals, also not funded is set reserve standards and fund. Does this imply that SAM does not have sufficient reserves?
we spent down the reserves for a couple reasons, one of which is Half Moon Bay, as usual, just didn't want to pony up their share. And there were things that we had to get done.
Okay, noted, thank you.
Yeah, most of what's wrong with Sam is because of Half Moon Bay, but let's not go there.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so this
Or at
agenda-
least not on this agenda item.
This agenda item is consideration of revised sewer authority mid-coast side operations, 5-year infrastructure plan, and contract collection service budgets for fiscal year 2017/18. And so the board could, by one motion, approve those 3 budgets and direct staff to prepare the standard resolutions that we use for these purposes, and have the board president and the secretary sign them.
And did you have the words as presented in there?
I did not, but include them, please, in the motion.
Or somebody
At
could
least,
say so moved.
Say moved as, my suggested language is referring to as presented for all 3 of those budgets.
3?
Seeing
3.
operations, 5-year infrastructure plan, and contract
Contract.
collections. So all 3 aspects. Because
Well,
that's how we-
there's 2 budgets. One is O&M, which includes the 5-year capital, at least I think it does.
Yeah,
And then there's the collection system budget, which is totally separate.
Council, what we're just reading the item as it was written on the agenda.
Right. So that's what I'm recommending that you act on, because I think you are also intending to approve the 5-year infrastructure plan.
Right.
You are.
So the motion would be to approve our standard form resolutions, approving the budgets as presented.
Right.
Anybody?
I'll make that motion, whatever it was. But
It's to approve our standard form resolutions, approving the 2 SAM budgets as presented.
No, it was to approve the Sewer Authority Midco Side Operations 5-year infrastructure plan and contract collection services budgets for fiscal year 2017-18, and to adopt the appropriate resolutions,
Yeah, that's what I said.
standard resolutions.
Sure, that's what I
Because
said.
we, yeah, well, kind of skipped the infrastructure.
Oh,
We've got it.
5-year infrastructure
You
plan.
did,
I didn't
he
see
did.
it. Oh, okay.
So we
Yeah.
got it in there now.
Okay.
Okay,
We used Delia's language.
second.
Oh, well, who made the motion? I was suggesting that as the motion. I didn't make the motion.
Oh, I thought Matthew made the motion.
Matthew did.
I don't remember saying anything in the last few minutes.
I read it for you.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'll take the credit.
Yeah, I'll second.
But this actually draws my attention back to attachment A, and this, under set reserve standards and fund at 726,000. The next item is interesting. Resolve IPS funding issue, who pays for what? How can that cost $25,000? Isn't it the SAM board that's going to resolve who pays for what? The unpaid board?
Not when half of the board, the Half Moon Bay rep, keeps insisting that Half Moon Bay doesn't have to pay for the IPS. So I've lost track of that. It's probably to go out and hire a special lawyer. Where is that on here?
It's not being funded,
Yeah,
so.
where?
They're not funding it, so.
Yeah, it's not funded, but they're not funding the reserve standards either, so.
Where,
I like the unfunded, ensure SAM in compliance with regulatory requirements. Wait, aren't they ensuring that they're in compliance with regulatory requirements as a part of their normal everyday operations? I don't understand why they need an extra $50,000. But that's not on the
you
table.
know that
so.
when I first got on the SAM board, my hair was black. I'll show you video.
Okay. Anyway,
My beard was black
We do
too.
have a motion, right?
We do have a motion, yes.
Okay,
Do we have any more?
we have a second.
Any more
Are we re-
pointless
Are we ready to
questions?
vote on it?
Sure.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 4-0.
I abstain on my motion. No, I'll vote aye.
Yeah, about 15 years ago, there was a Harbor District motion seconded by Pietro Paravato, who then voted against it.
That can happen.
That can happen.
That can happen. Sometimes people do that for discussion or to get it on the record.
I
Get some
guess.
clarity, yeah.
I guess. And at some GSD board meeting before I was on the board, AJ Prosser abstained on the motion to adjourn. And so I asked him why. And I was the board president when I asked him why, and he said, to get attention. And so at that meeting, he abstained on the motion to adjourn. I looked at him and he said, see?
All right, so now we need a second
So-
motion for the same thing, but with increasing the infrastructure project budget to $1,930,000,
All right, so,
Contingent on,
contingent on approval by the other two agencies that are part of SAM.
so that's a motion?
Sure,
Is there a
all the
second?
same thing as the first one.
I'll second, sure.
Discussion? And I believe that even without a rate increase, which we'll discuss on the next agenda item, but even without a rate increase, I think that we can still afford our share of that increase.
We have sufficient reserves, yes.
And so this is something you said was talked about at the public meeting, just didn't make it in as a piece of paper?
I was
Showing the change?
expecting that to be here, but the packet was prepared before the SAM meeting. That's a big part of the problem here. The timing was just
And
difficult.
I'll just say, my reason for supporting this is that it seems as if there are major issues with infrastructure, and that it seems like the number one job of this group is to keep the infrastructure functioning, and I defer to our representative, to Sam, because I think that's that's what we have to go on, and it makes sense to me, so.
Well, the member agencies are gonna have to increase spending on infrastructure over what's been done for the last 40 years? Let's see, when do we start counting? About 1981?
41 years,
What-
76 to 17.
Yeah, but they didn't turn any dirt until about 79 or 80 or something. That's why I'm unclear. They started meeting in 76. I'm unclear on when they started counting.
The Granada treatment plant was demolished in 83.
Yeah, but it was probably mothballed for a year or two.
At least there was building the IPS right out here in front in 78.
Okay. All right, yeah, 39 years and change. So, I've lost track of where we are. Did we
There's a
vote?
motion on the floor.
Did we vote on that?
Nope.
Did we get a second?
Yeah,
Oh,
I thought we did.
Oh, I
Yes, there
second.
was a second there.
So, is there anybody here who objects to an attempt to increase our infrastructure spending by approving the alternate budget and hoping that the other two member agencies also approve the alternate budget?
Yeah, the motion included everything that was in the first motion, which included standard resolutions.
So I'll have to
Yes.
conclude.
Yeah, contingent on
Okay.
the other two agencies passing it, which it sounds to me
Okay.
is not gonna happen.
Right. Actually, there's one more thing coming up after this while we're still on this agenda item. So, those in favor of approving the alternate budget with the increased line item, with the $500,000 increase in the line item for infrastructure, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
With
opposed? Any abstentions?
contingencies.
Yeah.
With the contingencies.
You're voting on the motion, right?
Yes.
Right. Well, the motion is to approve another resolution. So, to add to the fun, the collection system maintenance budget, at the suggestion of the three agency general managers, got stripped of all of the money for replacing equipment, notably the maintenance truck. And the SAM general manager, under this agenda item, reported that they're starting to cannibalize one truck to keep the other one running. There's our cameraman nodding. So he pays attention to what's going on in the meetings. And so the SAM board also wanted to put back some money on that. So if I understand what we did there, it was getting late. I was starting to glaze over, but I believe that the SAM board also asked for an alternate collection system budget with another 100,000. And I don't know if that's an existing line item or restoring a line item that was removed, but in any case, putting 100,000 more into the collection system budget. And I think our percentage on that one's gonna be significantly below our typical 30%. Because we pay less than 30% overall on the collection system.
Why didn't they just increase it in the first place?
We don't really know for sure. We think we understand why the agency managers wanted it removed, and that's because Half Moon Bay has been posturing about contracting with somebody else, like I think West Bay Sanitary. But even though Half Moon Bay keeps that on the fire, keeps stoking it, at the end of the day, it's pretty unlikely. They even admit that it's pretty unlikely they're gonna be able to do it, but they're gonna keep looking at it. I don't know, probably just as an intimidation factor against SAM.
Okay, here's what it says. It says equipment decreased by $170,000. Decreased to eliminate funding for replacement of CCS vehicles due to the uncertainty of continued contract services with one or more of the participating agencies.
Right, that's what I was just
Yeah.
talking about. I'd forgotten that that's actually in there somewhere.
I guess
So-
what my question was why, when they then come back with an amendment at
Yeah,
some point in
that's
the
what I
year.
was gonna say.
Because the member agencies need to set their rates. And so that's why the SAM budget has to be passed before the member agency budgets. Because the SAM budget is the big chunk of the member agency budgets. So, you know, in terms of the staff being able to do their jobs well and safely, they really need equipment that is not falling apart. And, you know, as much as I frequently argue against government spending, I think that both of these increases that we're discussing under this agenda item are necessary and appropriate.
Well, I wish our general manager was here to explain why he didn't think that
Yeah.
this was
Well, if I could
appropriate.
just state that I think if Sam was a little bit better about tightening spending on other areas, there would be no problem in doing so, spending on where it really is needed. And there was no cutback. In fact, you can see in the memo provided by the SAM general manager that she, well, let me back up a little bit. The SAM board requested their general manager to go back and discuss the issues that were, you know, a problem with the general managers. And she explains that in her memo, and then she actually did not implement anything that they had recommended except for the adjustments that she made to the infrastructure budget. So,
And even though all three agencies agreed on the
I
recommendation?
don't
Or was there
know what-
disagreement between
I don't know. I
us and
can't
half
say.
of Bay
I
saying
wasn't
no and
part
her
of that.
saying?
At the meeting on Monday, I specifically asked if all three member agency managers agreed with cutting the two budgets, the infrastructure line item from the O&M budget and the equipment replacement line item in the collection system budget. And she said that all three member agency managers were in agreement on that.
Right, but what I'm saying is that she didn't listen to them on the other areas that they had requested reductions on.
I can only speculate on why that
Well,
is.
she said it right in the memo, so.
But I mean,
Yeah.
she said why she ignored?
No,
some-
no,
okay.
she just simply said that you know, we discussed this, but this is what I did, which was different than what was discussed.
Well, on the O&M budget, the general manager reports to the SAM board and the member agency boards. On the collection system budget, she sort of is answerable to the three agency managers. Because the collection system is a contract service. And we could just choose to go somewhere else for it. It may not be practical.
I don't think it's actually directed towards the contract collections, because if you read, I found this section in the memo where she indicates that, which is on page, I don't know, there's duplicate. It's on her memo, page 7. It says agenda item number 7A at the top. And it says it starts in the middle of the page. It says the JPA general budget was discussed by the board of directors, the regular meetings of, et cetera. And then she says that the board requested that staff meet with the member agency managers and sewer engineers to identify ways to reduce the budget. This was in general, not just collections, but the JPA budget included, and reprioritize the infrastructure projects to lessen the impact on agency assessments. And then she goes on to state and itemize the things that they discussed, which included that staff needed to do more work and depend less on contractors, which means they were talking about reduction in professional services, which did not, you know, take place again, and key budget lines to eliminate vehicle replacement funding equipment, which they, I think that may be collections related, that staff may be overstaffed and so forth, and all these other things that she line items, but then she said staff did not include all of the member agency engineer recommendations in the revised budget. So she did not do all of those things. She came back with just a reduction in
Right, well, and the key thing was reprioritizing the projects, because Sam staff had developed a priority list of things that needed to be fixed through the capital projects program. And there were like 30 things on there, and it's kind of hard for the board to deal with when you have a 30-item list with the first 20 of them marked priority 1. That just sort of doesn't work. And so now everything has dropped below priority 1 except for the IPS. Well, it's up to this board, you know, we don't have to approve that. I think, you know.
How immediate, I mean, it seems to me, I was okay with doing it on, major infrastructure repairs that are critical, but a new truck, I don't really know the details of this. I mean, somebody's reduced it. Could we make a budget adjustment if somebody comes back and says, we've just, on further review, we really need a new truck?
Do they have two?
Plus, it's $173,000. What kind of truck is it?
These are really expensive custom ordered trucks that
I mean, what
cost
do they do?
anywhere
I'm
from
not disagreeing, I'm just saying, what do they do?
200 to 400,000. This is the truck you see driving around that has the big tank on the back.
Oh, okay.
They clean the sewer lines.
Actually, we have 2 trucks with different sized tanks. There's a Vector truck, and we got I think recently we got a more powerful one or something.
So we
but
have a new
the-
truck?
As of.
Anyway, can we
a
just
couple years
approve it
ago.
as written and then?
Well,
you
we
prepare
already
it?
did that, so we don't have to do anything then.
We already
on this
approved
right now.
contract collection services?
Mhm.
This is part of the previous, all right. then
We
I
approved
say
the one as presented.
They want
so-
another truck, come back and explain why they
Yeah,
want another truck.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I would like to hear why the general managers of the agency were in agreement that this could be cut.
Yeah, I certainly want to hear it, and I think
Yeah.
most or all of the SAM board might be interested. But ultimately, well, let me cover that under SAM Rep's report. So I think we're finished with this agenda item. Is there anyone who thinks we're not finished with this agenda item? All right, so we'll go to item 4, consideration of Granada Community Services District operations and capital budget for FY 2017-18 and potential associated sewer service charge increase.
The budget has been revised since the one presented in May. Of course, it doesn't include the increases that you were talking about to infrastructure with the contingencies. However, I did adjust it to include the adjusted budget that came in dated June 12th, the SAM budget. So the only numbers that changed on the GCSD budget, you will not see under the first page because that's operating revenues. And you will see the changes on the second page under the item 1, sewer operating expenses, SAM general treatment and administration. That number is now adjusted to the $955,139 that you see before. It was a lower amount, and then, a higher amount. And then the SAM collections was adjusted down a little bit. I believe it was 249 before it came down 10,000. So those adjustments have been made in here. And other than that, it's as it was presented last month.
Now, after discussing this with Delia, let me point out to everyone that the column titled FY 2016-17 estimated, I suggested to Delia that it be titled projected actual instead of the word estimated, because I think that makes it clearer as to what that column is, and that's what we've seen in other
Right.
budgets is having it labeled projected actual.
We'll change that in the future. So what the budget shows is that with the proposed sewer operating expenses and our revenues, that there would be a negative operating amount of the $246,093, which you see at the bottom of page 3.
What? Oh,
The difference
in
between
that column.
our revenues
Okay.
and our operating expenses.
Yeah, I was looking in a different column.
Yeah, sorry. Is up-
Because for 16 and 17, it's a much bigger number for the estimated.
Right, so,
Shortfall.
for the 17-18, that will cause a $246 negative.
246,000.
Yeah, 46,000, sorry. And since our beginning balance on July 1st will be approximately 4,326,000, as you can see on the last page, we've subtracted the capital projects, which total 804,310, and then the negative amount between our revenues and operating expenditures. And the transfer from the non-operating revenues, that's additional non-operating revenue that's added in, and that will leave us with a fiscal year-end reserve of 3,732 some odd thousand. So we are still in fairly good shape at the end of this fiscal year based upon this budget. And that's with the rates remaining at the 402 per single-family dwelling.
Right, and that also assumes that the SAM budget as presented is the one that is approved by all three member agencies. But if all three were to approve the alternate, then that.
It would change them.
It
It would add
affects,
70,000, right?
it would be by approximately 30% of the 500,000, so
I
it'd
thought
be,
it said 14% is what.
well, our share of the increased amount, our share of the $500,000
Oh, I'm sorry,
increase
yeah, you're
would
right.
be
I'm sorry. I read the wrong.
roughly 30% of 500,000.
Got it.
Um,
Looks like 26%.
Yeah, that may be correct this year.
So
That's what they have the
100 and-
percentage at, yeah.
130,000 or so.
There's also the unknowns of, are any other burn and strip parcels gonna pop up as available? And so I get a little antsy with drawing down our reserves by a significant amount. So, we haven't done a rate increase in a number of years. But the question is, because Chuck has been perfectly fine to draw down the reserves and not consider a rate increase. We've delayed it for so long that I don't know if we can get it done in time now.
It'd be pretty tough. I mean, 45 days, probably tomorrow, we'd have to get out the notice to everybody.
Yeah,
Seems,
I don't think his intention was to do that this year, and that's why he budgeted the $35,000 for the sewer service rate charge and reserve study. Because we don't want to just be pulling, numbers out of the air. We want to go ahead and do a professional study and have them determine what we need to do and, to project in the future what we need from our ratepayers.
Yeah, the problem is that it's gonna mean a bigger increase in future years, for two reasons. One is, we're spending down the reserves this year without covering it all. And then, we may try and play catch-up. So, just to pull numbers out of the air for discussion illustration purposes, instead of doing, say, 2%, 3%, 3%, we may end up having to do 4%, 4%. And one of the things that this district, I think, does better than most other agencies is we keep the rates fairly predictable and stable. And that sort of argues in favor of a smaller increase sooner. But I don't know, what does the rest of the board feel about this? Given the fact that Chuck has intentionally avoided talking about it to run out the clock, make it so we couldn't do it. And he denies that. I said that to him on the phone, and he very strongly denies what I just said.
Our last Prop 218 exercise, didn't we, that was 5 years worth, right?
Yes.
I thought it was 3.
I thought
Well,
it
it was at least 4, if I can say that.
And
Okay.
it had no rate increase through the 5 years.
No, that's not true.
I thought there was rate
We,
increase.
we had some adjustments, it went up to 402, and then that was over a period of time, we
Yeah,
had
it was
set
4 or 5 years.
increases. Yeah, it started at 265, and then it went to, or 3, I forget what the numbers are, but yeah, we had a steady increase over a period of time. I have the history, I can pull
But the
that up.
next fiscal year, it will remain 402.
We've been 402 for the last several years, yes.
Right, but it will remain
Right.
through that, what we got through the 218
Right,
process.
and I think in
previously.
defense of our general manager, he looks at it in terms of the fact that, you know, we are increasing for budgetary expenses that we haven't incurred yet, so, you know.
Well, what we can do, and this would sort of be my suggestion to the board, if the board's inclined to go this route, would be to do a Prop 218 process that gives a range of what the increases will be for each year, for however many years we decide to do it. What would council's recommendation be, how many years we cover in a potential 218 process now?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's very many legal issues that,
I think
Yeah.
Montera typically
Well-
does 3 years at a time.
you know,
When we
I would
have-
just say, why not do it what you did last time,
Yeah.
And so,
which
you
is
know,
4 or 5 years or something.
I would suggest 4. 5 years is kind of a long time. 3 years goes by really fast.
Well, when we
Um,
have a study done and we know what kind of numbers we're looking at, then we can better determine how to spread it out, I would think.
Can you do that
Absolutely.
under 218? Can you say it might go up this much, but then it might go up this much more?
No, generally you have to
You have to have a
specify,
s-
yeah.
Either that or
No.
A number, right?
The way Montera does it, and the way that I would recommend that we do it, is, the 218 process would say the rate increase can be up to this number, and the board may decide that a lower number is appropriate. So the 218 has to put an upper limit on it, and the board can have discretion to make it any number below that.
Sort of a related question is, does this agency have a reserve policy?
We don't
I don't
really
believe
have
that
a
we have
reserve
formally,
policy. But now's the
We have an
time for me to,
investment policy.
we have an investment policy.
now's the time for me to point out that this district funds our capital projects in a different way from every other district. The other districts typically will look to the upcoming year's capital projects out of their 5-year plan and see what the next year's capital projects are gonna cost, and then budget for that and set the rates appropriately. But this district, for longer than I've been on the board, has funded capital projects out of reserves. And so that allows the rates to be kept very stable, because whatever money isn't used in any given year goes into reserves. And then if it looks like the capital projects are drawing down the reserves too fast, then we've done a rate increase to build the reserves back up.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could craft a reserve policy along those lines. It just seems as if, you know, what is the goal for the amount of reserves for this agency? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking, like, what kind of problems could there be that a reserve would be needed for?
Well, I think the only reserves policy that exists is one, and we've probably sort of forgotten about this. This district doesn't run so bare bones that it's really that necessary at this point. But the one reserves policy that I believe we have is there's one reserve, let's see if I can remember what it's called, probably the operating reserve, because our county tax payments come largely twice a year, and our expenditures don't. And so the operating reserve was set up to basically fund the district operations until the tax payments show up. And so I think the operating reserve has to be something like half a year's expenditures, right?
Well, yeah, because for the first 6 months of the year, until we get that big payment in December, we would have
Right.
to have at least half of our operating
Yeah,
expenses.
so about the only reserve policy we have is the one that sets up that operating reserve with half a year's expenses in it. And other agencies actually have to borrow money to cover that first half year. And we don't, we essentially borrow from ourselves.
Right, and as you can see, our expenditures are, what are they? They're 1,792,000, and we have almost 4 million, or over 4 million in reserves right now, so.
Right, but basically, out of that 4 million in reserves, we have to consider that 900,000 of it is earmarked for the operating reserve.
I'd like to know more about that at some point.
I would add, you know, I think I would like to see more of a sensitivity analysis of kind of the, you know, worst case scenario, mid case scenario. So I did sense a dichotomy between Beverly making statements saying, listen, if we're gonna go in and put the resources into digging out some of these things and stuff, we might as well go and repair, you know, do the job the right way, and Chuck kind of pushing back a little bit, saying, hey, we'll just repair what needs to be repaired. Beverly kind of taking the longer term approach. If we're not gonna, if we're putting in money, that's a sunk cost, we might as well go to the full extent and kind of look out further into the future, so we're not constantly, you know, being reactive, we're being more proactive. And I think between, you know, someone like Chuck and someone like her, I think that I would like to see what those numbers are in their heads, and I think that kind of, you know, put that on paper would kind of show us what are some of these worst case scenarios that we could be in, where we might have to raise rates, you know, tremendously and shock people, versus, I think to Leonard's point, if we know we're going in that direction, I think, you know, it's unfortunate, but people in the long run, it's easy to ignore it, but in the long run, we're doing a disservice if we're gonna shock people down the road. We're better off kind of managing that over time, so then when that time does come, it's not as big of a shock and there's not so much anger.
Right. Let me give an example of potential shocks. The force main leak that resulted in spilling 750,000 gallons, give or take a bathtub. The Regional Water Quality Board, by law, has a range. They could fine us $1 a gallon. They could fine us all the way up to $10 a gallon. That would be a $7.5 million fine, of which 30% would be our share. And so that right there, you know, we're talking about a couple $1 million hit if the Regional Water Quality Board chooses to go to the high end. Now, one way to get them to look more favorably on us and consider the low end is to proactively fix the problems before they come down on us. So spending the extra $500,000 right away is likely cheaper than paying the fines in a couple of years. Because it takes the Regional Water Quality Board often a couple of years to get around to deciding what to do and how big the fine is going to be.
Always a couple of years.
Oh, always?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have two comments. Just about, we don't want to have a big ratepayer shock at some given time in the future. The counterpoint to that from the ratepayers is, why are we buying stuff, paying for stuff that hasn't been done and we haven't needed yet?
What?
Why, well, your point was that if there's some big infrastructure project needed, which there is, and we have to all of a sudden raise our rates to cover that, that makes the ratepayers unhappy. However, the ratepayers also get unhappy if they figure out that we're charging, the district is charging more than operating and, you know, all our other costs for contingencies that haven't happened yet.
Well, we're
No.
specifically collecting the money in advance to reduce the future shock.
That's called paying for things that you haven't done yet.
I mean, my only point, I would say,
Right.
I would say if the big variable is kind of the environment. I think if we didn't care about the environment, we were just a big oil company, you know, whatever, in terms of, if that wasn't a factor, we would just look at saying, oh, yeah, why, you know, that's just when it comes time, we'll deal with it. But because you know, the moral hazard is that by not being proactive with replacing it, the environment does suffer. I think that's kind of the argument
Which
for
brings
the.
me to the second point, which is the general managers have all now agreed and reprioritized fixing the IPS up to number 1, including sections that have not failed yet and are wearing out. But this is stepping into the future, recognizing that the IPS is going to wear out. So that's exactly what we're talking about doing, is fixing things before they break.
And I think ratepayers understand that. I think if you could give them a coherent explanation of what the projected expenses are gonna be for, nobody wants a failure of the system. So
Right.
I think people can respect planning ahead. They don't expect you to come up with the money for everything at the moment you're ready to do the project, I think.
Right, but if you look at all of the infrastructure projects that are not included in the current budget, and let's say, for instance, if they became immediate, out of the $3,025,000, we'd be talking about our share of approximately $750,000, which we can cover because of our sufficient amount of reserves. So we wouldn't find ourselves in a situation where we didn't have the funds to pay for any problems as they came up. I can't think of anything that would be so costly that we couldn't take care of it at this time.
I think it's just to Leonard's point, it's just that difference
It's
between.
good to look at the future.
Between,
Yeah.
do we, you know, do those rates, is it 10% or is it 5%
That's what the rate
over a
study is
couple-
gonna be for.
Yeah, and
So
so.
again, we're gonna have somebody come in and take a look at, you know, the SAM infrastructure, you know,
What time frame is that planned for?
next, it's gonna be done this coming fiscal year, starting
Well,
sometime
that's
between
a
July and June.
12-month range. Can you narrow it down?
I don't know. I would imagine that with the cost, we'd have to get a couple estimates, and, you know, we can start on that right away. It's a, you know, priority. We can get started. We don't want to crunch it and wait till the last minute, obviously, so I
But of
think
course,
we-
my concern is because that isn't done yet, then, you know, what do we do about this upcoming fiscal year budget? And keep in mind, we have a not well-known cost coming up on dealing with the rest of the Medio Creek Bridge pipeline.
That's included in our budget.
Yeah, but all that's just a little better than a guess.
No,
How much-
actually,
How
we
much
had,
money's included
it
for
was
that?
presented several months ago here. John Rayner, our district
Yeah.
engineer, presented the estimates for that. So it was a very detailed estimate that he had given us for the
I haven't
350,000.
seen John
Yeah.
Rayner in years.
I believe it was
Yeah, it was
350,000, and that's included in our
In our
capital
budget, yeah.
projects.
Well, it sounds to me as if we should do the rates, the study, and.
Right, and
I mean,
then,
it's too late to
Yeah.
even really think about it for, yes?
Yeah, realistically,
That's-
Realistically, it is too late, that's what comes, I mean,
yeah, because you need to have a basis for it, and a 45-day period, so that we could get it to the county by August 8th, so I'm figuring
we have ours,
tomorrow's
yeah.
16th,
Yeah.
45 days, you'd have to have a special meeting, say on July 31st.
Well, that wouldn't even make it because I have to have my submission to the county by July 31st. Yeah, we don't have 45 days, we just don't have it, yeah.
It's,
No, I was gonna ask something else. Let me mention that one of the reasons that we're sort of in this situation with the SAM budget, and this is, you may have seen this in Beverly's memo, that the agency manager said, run the SAM like a business. Well, one of the SAM directors, I forget which one, at the meeting this week said, it's a government agency, it's not a business. So, you know, the collection side, certainly that should be run as a business, but the treatment side, I don't know that you can run that as a business. All right, so it sounds like the sense of the board is we're not gonna talk about a rate increase this year. So are we inclined to approve the GCSD budget as presented?
well, we're not in a position to actually give a final approval because now that we're CSD, we have to either have a preliminary budget or do what we are planning to do, which is to have manager puts out a final proposed budget, a notice that's gonna have to be done by June 30th, and then in your July budget, July meeting, it'll be a public hearing in which people can comment on your budget, and then you can adopt it in final.
I see. And so there's no requirement that we have an approved budget before the start of the fiscal year?
They don't approve anything at this point.
Right, it's just in time for the accounting process, et cetera.
So I have one numbers question here.
Not tonight. They're not even in position to
Okay,
approve it.
okay.
What was that?
You are not in position to approve it tonight, and, because we have not advertised it as a preliminary budget.
Okay.
We have two options, and then we're not doing that option. We're a smaller agency, we're doing the post-final with a notice to the public, and then you'll have a public hearing at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so I have questions on one set of numbers that is giving me a headache. And it's essentially, it's on the last page of our budget. And it's all of the numbers related to the MPINC purchase. It appears to somehow be split across multiple years or something, and then there's this over-under budget that I don't understand. It's like, can you explain all the numbers on that line item?
You're talking about the park projects? Well, what are you saying?
Operating expenditures, projects, purchase of
Right.
MPINC Burnham Strip property.
We had budgeted last year 75,000, not knowing what, if any, projects would be moved forward in parks. So
Right.
75,000 was the budget. His estimate is the proposed actual because, and he put MPINC in there because the reason why we spent 188,000 is, and that's why that's the projected actual, is because that was the purchase cost to purchase the MPINC parcel.
Okay.
So the entire the budget for parks last year was the purchase of, the actual expenditures were for the purchase of MPINC. So he is budgeting this year $100,000.
And
So
I
we
can
were-
comment on that, which is, I was on the subcommittee, the Parks Committee that looked at the proposals for the outreach on the median project, the outreach and planning. And it was in the neighborhood of $100,000, so, you know.
What specifically was?
It was
To-
actually quite a bit more
Well,
than
no,
that. from
no,
my-
we,
yeah.
we revised it and took out
Some of
all
it,
the
yeah.
CEQA stuff, because there was a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff in there that we
Right.
weren't, at least the subcommittee
Right,
wasn't
right.
interested
Well,
in having them do, and
Yeah.
and meeting with county staff and so forth to come up with it. I mean, it went nowhere, because there's no agreement with the county, but
I
hopefully
I
that
didn't
will
catch
happen.
exactly what you said the 100,000 was.
Was to do public outreach and to do a master plan for the medians with specific plans for 2 of the medians, based on public input, so forth. Come up with, a trails
Wow.
plan
Right.
for
The
all
cost
the
was
medians.
actually to pay a landscape architect to
Yes.
do the work.
The
Yeah.
the county spent more on a planner for Murata Surf West than the project itself should have cost. So when the county talks about spending planning money, I just have to scoff, or worse.
Well,
Well,
I mean,
think-
seriously, they spent 75,000 on the planner when the whole project shouldn't have cost that much.
Right, well, this district, I mean, we don't, have any projects going right now, and it's difficult to budget for something.
And we don't know what it
that
is
hasn't
yet.
been presented or
Right.
approved by the board or even really viewed. So we are in very preliminary stages. This budget can easily be brought back to the board for amendment once a project is established. There are reserves that are available for parks, and our general manager has also indicated that we can shift more funds from sewer, which comes from property taxes, and to allocate towards parks if necessary. And if that, we see some action in parks this year, which I hope we
I hope
do,
so,
we all
I'll
are.
tell you.
That will also, come into play for doing the rate study and figuring out, so that way the property taxes aren't subsidizing the sewer service, and then we can shift more of that towards parks. So I think this year we're gonna see.
I'm fine with the
Yeah,
amount.
I think it's a fair amount to budget with the unknowns right now. And again, it can be amended, and there are assets there to shift over.
So if something comes up, then it looks like we will have the money in the Parks and Rec Reserve, because it's showing an ending balance for the next fiscal year of $333,800. So
Yeah.
if something came up, we could use that reserve money if
Mhm.
necessary.
And before we finish this item, because I was asking if we need to approve this budget, I just want to, my understanding is that number one, you're not going to ask for a rate increase, because it's one of the main reasons this was on today. But you are also not objecting to the manager putting out this budget as the proposed final budget.
Well,
Do they need a
I guess I'm okay with that. What about the other directors?
Well, it would have to be amended to reflect the potential change in the SAM.
Well, I think it has, oh, you mean the 500,000?
The extra.
Yeah.
So that would be 70.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll know within 2 weeks what the other member agencies approved.
Yeah.
But then could we come back, how could we have a public hearing without an investment in it? I don't know how we
Well,
would do
he
that.
could put out a proposed final budget, and he's not like locked into that.
Okay, all right.
So if something happens to change that, make that,
Can it be revised
No.
at the public hearing?
yes.
Then
Okay.
we're good. So there's no action on this other than the agreement that we tell the general manager to publish this as proposed final?
Yeah.
And we don't need a motion for that?
Nope.
Okay. Any objections to that?
Tell them.
Okay. I will.
Now the fun part, I hate doing meeting reports. So we have minutes. Let's see.
There are several meetings that we provided in this item. We have the May 8th SAM meeting minutes. And then we have the May 22nd, I believe, was the next meeting that was held, along with the manager's reports and the normal flow information that we provide for that. And then we also have the, let's see, what's the next one here? We also have the Monday meeting, June 12th.
Yeah, I was gonna ask for a .95 closed session, except now I forgot for what. So I have to go back and try and remember why it was that I wanted the .95 closed session. And council knows what I'm talking about, even if nobody else does.
I don't, you want to tell me?
He's
Would
just
you like to
referring
explain it?
The last three numbers of a code section that authorizes.
It's like 54954.95
Hold a closed session to discuss something that has gone on at SAM,
in closed session.
in closed session.
Ah,
Basically, to get this board up to speed on closed session discussions at the Joint Powers Authority.
oh, I thought you were talking about this at SAM, but it's here.
It's to inform this board on something that was discussed in closed session at the SAM board, except right now I can't remember what it was. So hopefully I'll remember in time for our next agenda.
You want me to do a quick run through on this May 8th meeting that I've attended in your stead?
I'm never gonna say no to that.
Well, it's going to be quick because almost nothing happened at this meeting.
Oh, is that why I don't recognize what's in the minutes? Because I wasn't there.
No, I was there. The key things under old business were discuss the draft terms for recycled water from Coastal County Water District, and give direction to staff. It was clear that, I think it's fair to say, no one on the SAM board was happy with the draft terms that the Coastal County Water District had presented for various reasons that could be summarized as, this puts everything on SAM and nothing on CCWD.
And gives control to CCWD.
Right, yeah.
So they have all the control and Sam has all the responsibility and liability.
Exactly, yeah. And for some reason, the SAM board just wasn't going for it. So then, one of the directors, Scott Boyd, suggested that rather than getting into the nitty-gritty of discussing how to change the draft terms from CCWD word by word, that there are existing examples that we could adopt, and that the Recycled Water Committee has already been presented with a group of those, and
Which all or mostly came from Chuck at my request, and at least one of them, they could have just crossed off the names of the Southern California agencies involved and written in the agencies here and approved it.
that's essentially what Scott Boyd said. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel on all this stuff.
And yet-
And so that's as far as the recycled water thing went, was that staff will come back with those counter proposal for terminology, et cetera, with the water district. They also reminded us, though, that we need a replacement for former Director Lohman on the Recycled Water Committee, which we don't have now.
Yeah, I might get stuck with that since Jim Blanchard has indicated that he can't do it.
I think you're the only other possibility. So,
Yeah, my wife might kill me.
well, then you wouldn't have to do it. Then there was general discussion about the new fiscal year budget, and some board members expressed concern about the, I think incomprehensibility is not too strong a term, of the way the budget was presented, and asked for clarifications on various things. And then
Chuck might not disagree with that either.
I'm pretty sure. I think the same general manager may have said that same thing. And the rest of it was pretty non-consequential new business, including adopting a resolution of appreciation for Rick Lohman for his numerous years on the SAM Board of Directors.
And also Jim Harvey, who didn't get one previously.
Right.
Okay, May 22nd. I'm trying to remember, was I there for that one? I guess so. Yeah, there's my name on there. So we presented the resolutions to the two past directors. And then mostly it was updates on the various force main leaks, both old business and part of new business. So, you know, with all of these leaks in various parts of the pipe that aren't that far apart and close together in time, it's become pretty obvious that we need to move expeditiously on replacing the whole thing. The one thing I'm still not clear on is when we did the repair on the segment from the Portola pump station down to a little past Coronado, we did what's called CIPP, where they heat up this plastic liner that starts out inside the truck, inside out, and they blow it into the pipe,
Yeah.
and then hot air or steam or something to cure it in place. So CIPP is cured in place something. Do you know what the last P is? I forget it. I don't think it's pipe. And so even though that reduces the inner diameter of the pipe, it provides a very smooth surface, so you end up not reducing the capacity of the pipe with that. But for some reason, they've decided that that approach won't work on this one, and so they're actually gonna dig up the pipe, take it out, and drop a new one in.
I think it's pipe liner, last P is pipe liner, but it's one word.
Cured in place pipe liner?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, if you say so. So basically, if you read the minutes here on the updates on all the various force main leaks, it should become obvious why,
Yes, it's kind of sobering, the list of
yeah,
spills and so forth.
yeah, and
It's very sobering, it's kind of sobering.
the pipe wears out for two reasons. The grit that goes in there and basically scours the bottom of the pipe so it becomes thinner and thinner until it disappears and springs a leak. And then there's also, I think they're doing some testing to determine the, I guess, pH of the soil there. That may also be a contributing factor, since it seems to be a bigger problem at one spot in Montero, which isn't being talked about for this current go-round, and then the areas down around Medio Creek and Alto, it seems to be a bigger problem there. So, engineering is currently looking, I think they're hiring a specialist contractor to evaluate what might be going on there. Okay, so there isn't really anything else to report on for the May 22nd meeting. And
There was a discuss and consider adopting proposed media relations policy and provide direction to staff. And it seems as though the SAM general manager is already moving on that, as seen by the plethora of emails I've been receiving, and I believe the city staff and the newspaper has too.
at, I guess it was the second May meeting, there was a, what some people called a draft press release regarding the April 3rd spill, but it wasn't a draft, it was presented as a sample. And so a lot of us have gotten beaten up by members of the public and the press over the SAM board refused to authorize issuing a press release. Well, what would be the point of issuing a press release for a leak that occurred 7 weeks prior? And there are good reasons which which 4 of the SAM board members understood and 2 of them did not. There are good reasons for not issuing press releases on sewer spills. And the 2 that did not understand are the 2 from Half Moon Bay. Surprise, surprise, surprise. But if you ask Chuck privately, he'll tell you why you don't issue press releases on sewer leaks. And Beverly had to look far and wide to find other agencies in the state that do it. I think she found 2. One of them, East Bay, and maybe East Bay Mud, and I forget where the other one was. So it's just not done. But the whole concept is still, I think, under discussion.
How much discussion was there around what things could have been done differently in terms of what red flags, which indicators, like you're saying pH levels or other things? Was there any?
You mean regarding why?
The 750,000 gallons that spilled, was there any discussion in terms of not, obviously nothing to do with the press release, but just taking a step back and saying, in retrospect, what were some of the red flags
Well,
and things that
the
could have?
problem on that one was the leak had been going on for quite a while before it was discovered. Someone, I forget who, noticed that the flow in Medio Creek was higher than it should have been for that time of year. And so they started investigating, and they eventually tracked it down to a leak in the force main, which at that point, I think they estimated, they went back and started looking at flow records, and I think they estimated it had been going on for 5 days. So this wasn't, all of a sudden 750,000 gallons. It was a somewhat slower leak over a significant period of time.
Someone who? A SAM person? Or
I,
city staff?
I think it was, this is written down somewhere, but I don't remember. I think it was a SAM staff member who happens to be, who lives near there in Half Moon Bay and happens to be pretty familiar with Medio Creek. I think that's who it was. And if it wasn't, then it was another resident who lives very close by there and is very familiar with Medio Creek. So, if it hadn't been reported by whoever that was, it could have gone on for a lot longer.
Had there been any issues with that area that you're saying as far as historically in terms of in close proximity to where that was?
I believe there was a much, much smaller leak. I forget how big they said this one was, but this was a pretty big hole in the pipe. I believe there was a much, much smaller leak around 4 years ago or 6 years ago. It shouldn't be that hard to track down if you really want to know. And remember what I've said is these leaks always occur right before an election, but we shifted our election date to even year and somebody didn't tell the IPS that. So that's why it leaked this year.
Well, there have been numerous, several leaks upstream from that pretty recently. Starting with that one you mentioned
Right.
from the Portola station, and then I think there's 3 more in between there and where the big leak was, and then one downstream as well.
Well, the engineers are studying why the pipe is developing these leaks, but the executive summary is, it's old, it's worn out. Now, the surge tank at the Portola pump station has apparently been out of service for a number of years, and so when the pumps, particularly the big pumps at Portola, kick in, that doesn't help the situation with a pipe that's in poor condition. And so I suppose, I'm not a hydraulics engineer, but I suppose when the big pumps kick in, that could cause the really weak part of the pipe to punch through. And so as you may have spotted in the SAM CIP budget that we just approved, along with the IPS repair was a $75,000 subline item for fixing the surge tank at the Portola pump station, and that will theoretically get done before the IPS repair so that it doesn't impact the new pipe. And they're also proposing, but obviously this has gotten deferred to a future year, making other improvements at Portola with the pumps and I think they call it a sand filter, but basically something that takes the grit out. Because people put a lot of stuff into the sewers that doesn't belong there, and some of it wears out the pumps prematurely, some of it wears out the pipes. So people need to stop putting things down the drain that don't belong
Oh,
there.
and some of it comes from I&I though.
The grit from I&I, really?
Sure. Comes from the matrix that the pipes run through, because that's, when there's inflow it's not just water.
Okay, I guess.
From what I've heard, the SAM engineers have known for years that the IPS is wearing out, that they are still trying to figure out why specific points that weren't detected all of a sudden break. Because there are points, obviously there are points that wear out faster than the general length of the pipe. And I keep thinking there must be some way to predict this, but maybe not. I don't know.
I think that it's been subbed out to a corrosion specialist.
Yeah.
I mean, could it be what Leonard brought up in terms of a lot of the same things are just, you know, a lot of the same factors, but then you have pH levels or something that all of a sudden the older pipeline and all those factors are gonna be that specific section when it changes. You know, if they're testing for those types of things, they would say, okay, you know, they can narrow that down more, saying, okay, here's the same pipe, but these areas have more risk because of the soils and some of the other
It's
factors.
likely a
that are-
combination of factors.
Yeah.
So, you know, we'll have to wait for the corrosion specialist's report. And I'm not sure, but I think that the replacement pipe's gonna be a different material. Oh, yeah, it's gonna be HDPE.
HDPE.
Right. Some really dense, hard plastic. And I'm not sure I remember the answer. I asked how thick it's gonna be, and it's like that thick or something. Because those are big pumps over at Portola Pump Station.
Yeah, the existing pipe is metal. What is it?
Ductile iron, I believe.
Ductile iron, right, yeah. It's
Whatever
not-
that means.
It does, it means it's not quite steel.
And none of it was designed to last forever,
No.
so.
Yeah, but it should have lasted for 50 years, and it didn't.
Yeah.
So this is a premature failure.
I asked at the meeting I went to about how long, what's the expected life of the HDPE.
I asked, I didn't get a useful answer.
These really thick ones, and, yeah, I didn't get a definitive answer too, but, what's his name? Tim said, you know, the manufacturers are talking in the range of 100 years, but nobody's got pipe that's been in the ground for anywhere near that long, so.
I don't think HDPE was manufactured that long ago.
Oh, no way, no.
So, for the meeting this week, June 12th, all we have is the agenda here. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about the Conference of Legal Counsel anticipated litigation. Spent a lot of time talking about the budget and sort of didn't actually complete the agenda. So we didn't get to, notably, we didn't get to 8C, discuss day and time of regular board meetings. So the twice a month SAM board meetings, that policy ends this month. So we need to have that agenda item at the top of the second SAM meeting in June to see if we're going to continue with 2 board meetings a month or not.
And if something's done, it reverts to once a month?
I think so, yeah. So in terms of the budget discussions, the primary thing that I want to point out in public here is Half Moon Bay pushed really, really hard to separate the budgets and send to each member agency an O&M budget for everything except the force main capital improvement, or else maybe for everything except the force main, I mean the capital improvement budget overall, but since that consists of the force main, it's kind of the same thing. And they made a motion to send 2 separate budgets. That failed 4-4. And then someone from Granada or Montera made a motion to send the one budget as required by the JPA agreement. And that failed 4-4. And then I think what finally passed was my motion to send one budget. We're ignoring the collections because that's always a separate budget, and so that was a lot easier to get agreement to send that out for approval. So the motion that finally passed was my motion to send it as one budget with the capital improvements as presented, and staff will work with Half Moon Bay on Half Moon Bay's need for expanded presentation materials or something like that. They said they wanted to present it separately or better or whatever, and but there, in fact, is a really good reason why it has to be one budget. So we actually managed to get that, and all that was approval to send the budget out to the member agencies. It wasn't even approving the budget. And so when we finally got one of the Half Moon Bay reps to understand that all we were doing is approving sending it to the member agencies for approval, then she finally agreed to vote for it.
Okay.
So, I think we've beaten the SAM director's report into the ground. Can we move on? Consent agenda. Darn, Chuck's not here. I think I had a couple of things on,
And I have a question. Obviously, I can't vote on number 6, number 7.
sure you
and
can,
I believe number 10.
sure you can.
I'm not
Because
gonna vote on minutes when I wasn't here.
all you're doing is saying you believe that it correctly represents what happened at the meeting.
No, I don't think she can vote on it because it's not at the meeting.
All right, so let's split it off
Can I
then.
vote for number 11? Or do I need,
Were you on the board?
Consent agenda.
well, it's no, it's not minutes. It's
So-
approval of assessment district distribution. I don't know exactly what that is.
Yes, you can.
So I can, and I can vote for number 9. So I can vote for
Yes.
8, 9, and 11.
All right, so
And I have to recuse myself from the others.
So what are we gonna do? We're gonna split
I
the
have to
consent,
abstain. I
6
mean,
and
I have to
7?
abstain, yeah.
Let me see where my notes were on minutes. Well, let me ask council a real quick question. Is the language here correct, where it says, I'm looking at May 18th at the top of the second page. It says, President Blanchard read the title of the ordinance and Director Warren move final adoption of the ordinance and to waive its second reading in entirety. Is that the right language?
Yes.
Okay. So no issue with that then.
I would just, May 11th, I was just gonna recommend, says Director Seaton stated his preference for the democratic process of election without concern for the cost.
All right, it sounds like we need to take it off of consent then. So let's do that.
Well, let's see what is.
All I was gonna say is, Jonathan and Chuck weren't here and it wasn't on camera, but I was, I was concerned with the cost. The point, there was some disagreement between how much it could cost. Delia was saying it could be around 6,000. Leonard was saying that he felt it could be 20,000 plus. So, I was saying, that if it's, if it's below 10,000, I think, that I think for sure we should hold the process of election. Otherwise, I was kind of looking to Chuck to see if we could look more into how much more it would cost to
So
that.
that'd be a lot to add in at this.
Yeah, so instead of without concern for the
So
cost,
what are you
pending
saying
further investigating what the cost
But
would
what are
be.
you saying? You want those comments in the minutes?
Just saying, instead of without concern for the cost,
This is where?
the May
May
11th,
11th.
bottom of the first page. David Seaton stated his preference for the democratic process of election without concern for the cost. I would say cross without concern for the cost and just change it to pending further investigation into the cost.
So you want to replace everything after the first comma?
Just take out without concern for the cost.
Okay. and put in what?
Pending further investigation into what the cost would be. Just because that was one of the reasons I wasn't even more, more outspoken in terms of, if at some point, if the costs were too high, then yeah, it wouldn't make sense. But that was one of the key questions I did have.
All right,
is-
so, since Barbara wasn't here, do you agree with, what he's saying?
Well, as
He
duly
actually
duly
said,
noted below that paragraph, I was late. I didn't arrive until 7:30, and this is structured so that this happened before I got there, so I can't speak to that. But after I arrived, it appeared to me that this comment would have been accurate.
so
That,
you're supporting his requested change here?
Well, I can't speak to it because I wasn't here to, if he said something along the lines of, I'm not concerned with the cost.
Well,
I don't know.
anything that he said after you got here, he probably said before you got here. So if you recall him saying it that way after you got here, then I'm okay with changing the minutes this way.
Well, then I think without concern is rather strong, but I don't know how to replace that.
Well, he's asking for it to say pending further investigation. Oh, I shouldn't have crossed out all those.
Well,
Pending
when I
further
was here-
investigation of the cost.
When I was here, it did sound to me like concerns for the cost was the least of his concerns.
Yeah, I agree with that. So now I'm not sure what we should do with the minutes.
Well, from what I'm hearing, you're not gonna have 3 votes to go one way or another.
And just because, the way I read it is, and I think it's misconstrued if you say, no matter what the costs are gonna be, we need to hold an election. It doesn't matter, irrespective of what the costs
Well,
are.
I think he's sort
And
of.
I was
did
concerned
say
with the
that.
cost. I was just saying, I wanted to get a more accurate, because Leonard was bringing some doubt that the $6,000 figure was even accurate. So I was saying, if that's accurate, let's hold an election. And then he kind of, pointed in some doubt that it could be much more than that. And that's where there was back and forth in terms of trying to figure out exactly if we knew what it.
All right, what I would like to do is table this until we can get Jim Blanchard's input as to what actually was said at this meeting. So let's, why is our assistant manager missing?
She's trying to get the resolutions put together.
All right, so let's table this, I don't know until when, let's say date uncertain until we can see what Jim's recollection is. And also we can check with the assistant general manager and see what her recollection is.
Well, what really matters though is what the board members' recollection is. That's what it gets down to.
Right.
I mean, you could listen to what she had to say about it.
Yeah,
I think she wrote this, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah. I do want to check with Jim though.
All right, so you're tabling that.
Right. Okay, so that's May 11th, tabled. So May 18th. All right. So my issue's a non-issue with that one. Is there a motion to approve May 18th minutes as presented?
I will make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Abstain.
opposed? Okay, so that's 301. Okay, so then I have some.
Here's my question on the June 1 minutes. Half of the meeting, I was being interviewed, and
But
the second half.
you were here for the meeting, even if you weren't sitting at the table, so you know what happened at the meeting.
So I can.
Don't get that nitpicky, that's my job.
No, Leonard, believe me, I'm not gonna challenge you on nitpicking.
So I have a discussion question, or council could weigh in. Under action agenda item 1, it says, where the board elected appointment. That's confusing language. Is there any reason why that can't say where the board chose appointment?
It should.
Should say chose?
Or voted on.
Yeah. Which item here, what?
The third line under action agenda item 1.
Supported?
I think it should say chose.
Chose is probably the best word then.
And, potentially we could put Director Seaton dissenting. Want to do that? Anybody?
There it is. Yeah, you could. I mean,
Actually,
I thought it was already
there
used.
had to be a motion for that. That was at the previous, yeah, so that's gonna show up in the previous minutes, so I guess we don't need to do that here. All right, so we're gonna make that one word change to say chose. And then, under item 5, the vote isn't given. That should indicate 5-0, right? Because that was a motion. I don't remember by who.
Well, we might have to table that.
Oh, I
and see.
made that motion.
Okay.
Uh,
Who seconded it? Anybody remember? Because if we don't, we might have to go back and check our notes.
All I remember is it was 5-0 after discussion.
Which one?
Item 5, consideration of appointing representative of the San Mateo County chapter of the California Special Districts Association.
Yeah, I thought,
Did you second?
Matthew made the motion.
Yeah. Who seconded it?
I think Leonard did.
Maybe, I don't remember.
You willing to accept that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to go back.
No, it was 5-0, so I
Yeah.
don't think it's critical. Who made the motion?
All right, I just wanted to have that in the minutes that it was
Okay, so we
unanimous.
would be amending that to say, guess there was no motion?
Well, there had to be a motion.
Matthew made the motion.
Yeah, I did.
Right, so then, action, Director Clark moved to appoint Director Seaton as district representative to the local chapter of CSDA. And then the parenthetical would be Clark/Warren, and 5-0.
Okay? So I'll leave my markup page for Delia.
So now we need a motion to approve these meetings, minutes?
Well, can we do all the rest of the consent agenda?
No, I can't
think
vote
you-
for number
yeah.
10.
Besides which, you did change this quite a bit, you should just have one motion on this one.
All right, is there a motion to approve the June 1st minutes as amended?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Motion carries 4-0. Right?
So are you making a note of who made the motion there? Was the Guy? And who seconded it?
I did.
Here, 4-0.
Okay. Is there a motion for items 9 and 10 on consent? June warrants for $140,993.
They have to be separate because I have to abstain on 10.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, you could do them as one, but you would abstain, you just announce that you're abstaining.
Okay, however, yeah.
Right?
It's a motion to approve items 10 and 11, right?
No, 9 and 10,
9, 10, and 11. Right?
right? Could be.
And 11.
Just do what you want, just make the call.
I'll move that we approve consent agenda item number 9, approval of June warrants for $140,933.68. Number 10, approval of April 2017 financial statements. And number 11, approval of assessment district distribution number 10-16/17.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Why are you abstaining on one of these?
It's the April 2017 financial statements. Can I don't,
You can't because you're reviewing
I can?
what's been presented.
All right, great. That's why I was asking you.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we'll consider that consent, no discussion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? 4-0. Okay. I guess I should just go look at the agenda since the rest of the stuff has little in the packet. Item 12, report on seminars, conferences, or committee meetings. Anyone? Going once, going twice. Item 13, attorney's report.
No report.
Thank you. Item 14, general manager's report.
No report.
Item 15, administrative staff report.
Nothing further than what's provided in the packet.
And there's nothing in the packet for the engineer's report. So, do we need to discuss special meeting date?
Can we discuss it now, or can we do it outside of the meeting?
What meeting?
Special meeting date?
I sent around an email to try and schedule a special meeting for the Burnham Strip Management, the Natural Resources Management Plan presentation by the RCD.
You can discuss that.
I threw out 2 dates, but I'm open, so.
Yeah, well,
I-
When did you send that? I didn't see it.
This evening.
It was right before.
It was
the
about an
meeting.
hour before the meeting.
No. I haven't-
6:45 to be
I think I
precise.
suggested, I spoke with the RCD representative, and he's available anytime that is important to him, so he said he'll be available, whatever works for you guys. I think the dates that I threw out were 2 Thursdays. One was the 29th, which is 2 weeks from today, and the other one was on the 6th of July.
Yeah, I would
If
very
you
much,
want to push it later,
I
we
would
can do
very
that.
much not I would appreciate it not being on July, was it 5th?
It's the 6th.
And I can't make that date.
Yeah.
Okay, so whatever date that you guys can come up with, we can work out the time.
I think June 29th is okay with me.
I will be away from the 17th of June until July 20th. So
Whoa.
I-
Is Jim going as well?
I'm really
I have no idea.
sad because I'm very
What
interested
were
in
those dates
this.
again? I'm sorry, Barbara, I know you did.
From June 20th, so day after tomorrow. I
Okay.
mean, June 17th, sorry, June 17th to July 20th.
Okay, so maybe we should do it after July 20th.
Oh, Jim won't be here for June 29th.
So that's off, so.
Okay, so how about if we?
I would love to be here for that, but I would try to have some input while I'm traveling.
What if we look at, okay, so you're coming back on July 20th, which is our meeting night, our regular meeting night. Are you gonna be able to make that? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
So the 27th then would be the next one?
How about, we could do it the 3rd or the 27th?
27th,
July 27th?
Meetings two successive weeks.
I can swing it, we have, and we can do it the 3rd.
So it'd be just the one agenda item?
Actually, I was thinking about possibly addressing some other issues. We do have the final plan from the engineer who's handling the Harbor District dredging project, and they would like to request permission to place the dredged sand on the Burnham Strip, and I thought that's a good way of coupling it with the management plan.
Oh, we might have to
You
charge
mean
it.
temporarily?
Temporarily, yeah, it's a temporary, just they need a staging place, and they have exhausted all of their options at this point in time. But I figure we can talk about that, at the same time.
Can't talk about it now.
Yeah.
All right, well, send me a proposed draft agenda item, since Jim
Okay,
won't be
so
back
do
in
you think
time.
that we could schedule it then for later in July? With the
I don't know, when are people gonna be back?
27th? You'll be available, Barb? Will you be available?
You're coming back.
I'll be back on the
For a
27th.
week sometime in July, August, but I don't recall exactly.
I'm
the date.
sorry, so the 27th should work, maybe, and
July?
All right, so July
Yeah.
27th?
Yeah,
I believe
Yeah.
so.
sounds like it will work. I'll reconfirm with everybody and Jim too, so. Okay. Good.
All right, are we ready to adjourn?
Did they say how much time approximately? Did they give an estimate?
You know, it really depends on how many questions there is. I hope it isn't more than an hour, but I would say at least probably about an hour.
Well, if they tell you an hour, count on an hour and a half
Well,
minimum.
That's my
with-
guess.
With
so,
questions.
Yeah, I
And
should
then
be.
if we're gonna ask them about this, using it as a storage area for sand,
They actually, well, I can't discuss it right now, so we'll talk about it.
I mean, I was gonna say maybe invite someone from the Parks Advisory Council or whatever, just to have another agenda item focus. I think that would be,
Actually, now that you brought that up, we are going to have to address restaffing our Parks
Yeah,
Advisory Committee.
Well, put reappointment of the whole committee on some
Yeah.
very near future agenda,
I plan on doing that.
so
okay?
yeah.
So
But
we'll see how,
some-
we'll see how it
Either
looks.
way, I think some line item, it sounds like would be a good time, since that meeting's not gonna run super late, to get some, just updates on parks, where we're at.
We'll put what we can on a regular meeting agenda, and then whatever
Yeah.
parks related, we'll try and shift over to that one, and then we'll see how it works out. Are we officially adjourned?
All right, we're adjourned.
I have a check for you, John.